Hey guys, so today we're going to dive into checkpoint 2. Why do we need the constitutional principles of checks and balances and individual rights? All right, so if you look at the screen, what you see in your platform is what is there now. All right, so there's going to be some resources that you're going to need. First, you're going to have to open up your graphic organizer, present day principles, and you're going to need your two document sets. We're going to start off with checks and balances. Okay, before we do that though, let's see exactly what you have to do for this checkpoint. All right, so it looks just like the first checkpoint. You're going to have to, the difference is that you're going to have to explain why we need these principles using real world examples. All right, so you're going to need one paragraph for checks and balances, and another one for individual rights. And you're going to be using your graphic organizer to construct your sentences. The thing that's different about this checkpoint is you're going to have to compare and contrast individual rights with checks and balances. And that's the cog skill, comparing and contrasting. Okay. Now let's take a look at the actual document set. So if we start off with the document set, it's going to begin with impeachment trials. Impeachment is when Congress finds the president guilty of a crime. It's the House of Representatives who charges them, and it's the Senate who determines their fate, or their punishment. So let's take a look at Resource 1. Resource 1 is when President Andrew Johnson was impeached, basically because they felt like, or the Congress, the radical Republicans felt like he was taking it too easy on the former Confederates. Remember, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and Andrew Johnson, who was his vice president, took over the presidency, and they were really unhappy with Andrew Johnson's leniency toward the former Confederates, so Congress basically impeached him. You can use this one as a example of why we need impeachment. Okay, but I think you're going to be more interested in some other ones. Probably the most famous impeachment was the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was president near the end of the Vietnam War. And like in the last year of the war, in 1972, he was up for re-election. If you take a look at the charges here, it says agents of the Committee for the Re-election of the President committed unlawful entry at the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee in Washington, D.C. for the purposes of securing political intelligence. So the charge is the president sent these guys over there to break into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee to basically steal information that he can use in the election. And Congress found out about that, and the press found out about it, and he was impeached. He resigned from the presidency, though, before the Senate get to decide his fate. And so this is a good one to use. Let's move on to Resource 3, where Clinton was impeached. This happened when I was in high school, all right, back in the 1990s. Clinton was impeached for lying under oath, all right? So it said the House approved of 2 articles of impeachment against the president stemming from the president's response to a harassment civil lawsuit and to a subsequent grand jury investigation. It says here the first article charged the president with committing perjury and testifying before the grand jury about his relationship with the White House intern. So lying under oath is a crime, and he was charged with that. The Senate trial resulted in him being acquitted on both articles or found innocent. He got to remain as president and was reelected. So yeah, Clinton was impeached. Let's move on down to Resource 4, where Trump was impeached a year ago. Pretty much a year ago. So you can say here, the probe focused partly on whether Trump abused his presidential powers and sought help from a foreign government to undermine Democratic foe Joe Biden and help his own re-election. Pelosi said such actions would make a betrayal of his oath of office and declare no one's above the law. Here is a great passage you can use to talk about why we need impeachment. But also the one about Clinton too, about Clinton lying under oath. So he said in the first article charged the president with committing perjury testifying before a grand jury, there's a great piece of evidence that you can use too. President shouldn't lie or do bad things. Okay, now we're going to go to resource 3. Resource 3 is where we have the Supreme Court striking down President Obama's executive order pertaining immigration. So if you take a look here, dealing a major blow to President Obama's controversial executive immigration order, the U.S. Supreme Court announced Thursday had deadlocked on a lower court's decision to block the plan, which would provide relief from deportation and work permits to millions of people. Okay, so here we have an example of the judicial branch to check on the executive. Let's scroll down. Supreme Court versus President Trump. Here we have another example of the judicial branch checking on the executive. A federal judge in Washington has struck down key parts of the President Trump's executive orders that would have made it easier to fire federal employees. Okay. That's not an immigration case. And we have resource 5, a First Amendment case. The judicial branch contains Supreme Court. They hear cases, review laws before them, and make decisions based on the Constitution. You can use this. All right, there's a lot to read there. You can read that and you can find a good piece of evidence to use, or you can summarize. And then we have resource 6, a Second Amendment case that deals with the right to bear arms. It says the Supreme Court's solid conservative majority can soon choose to take up its first major Second Amendment case in nearly a decade, positioning the court to override state laws establishing the limit the availability of accessibility of firearms. Okay, you can use this as well. So guys, if you take a look at checks and balances, there's a lot of great available resources to use. You can use one or some, but remember, you just need one. So you can use more, but I would just pick one. All right, so obviously, you're going to put checks and balances. What evidence in the text helps you understand meaning your principle? So whatever principle you pick, or whatever resource you pick, you have to explain how it helps you understand checks and balances. Okay, then put your quote, and then explain why the author of this document, what did he hope to achieve? In other words, what was the purpose of impeaching the president? Okay. Okay, if you go to principle 2, principle 2 is going to be on individual rights. So I need to go back to that. All right, so let's find our document set. Individual rights. So you're going to pick one of these. All right, so resource 1 is freedom of assembly. In fact, this happened here in Houston, Fred Hartman Bridge. It's how you get to Baytown. So if you know that bridge, the Fred Hartman, there was a bunch of environmental activists who tied themselves to it to protest. It says several environmental activists suspended themselves from the Fred Hartman Bridge in Houston Thursday morning to protest the use of fossil fuels and challenge the Democratic president candidates preparing for the debate. So essentially, you have a bunch of Greenpeace activists who tied themselves to a bridge, dangled off the bridge by some rope, and the police said, okay, well, they're just expressing their First Amendment right, freedom of assembly. Okay. Then we have resource 2, the right to bear arms. Okay, so armed man at Walmart says he was testing the right to bear arms. To read the article, it's pretty interesting. Prosecutors on Friday filed a terrorist threat a threat charge against a 20-year-old man who said he walked into a Missouri store wearing body armor and carrying a loaded rifle and a handgun to test whether Walmart would honor his constitutional right to bear arms. He did this after a major shooting, it was a shooting out in El Paso. It was like a week later. He walked to Walmart, with a bunch of weapons and wearing body armor, and he said that he felt unsafe, so he had to walk into Walmart to feel safe in what he was doing. This is an interesting one to use for the right to bear arms, or Second Amendment. All right, as it says here, the guy says, I wanted to know if Walmart would honor the Second Amendment. Or it says at the bottom, he said he bought the rifle and body armor because of 3 recent shootings and a stabbing, and he wanted to protect himself. All right, so this is a good article to use for your Second Amendment. Let's go on to due process. Judge rules Boston Immigrants Court detention hearing violated due process. It says here, in a decision by civil rights advocates, a federal judge in Boston ruled last week that the way authorities handle detention hearings in Boston Immigration Court violates due process in the Constitution. If you read the article, it said that immigrants have due process rights. And this is a good article to use as well. Okay, if we go to our fourth resource for freedom of speech, it says Donald Trump's executive order targeting social media companies faced its first legal challenge Tuesday, claiming that Trump violated the company's right to free speech. Okay, great article to use. And we go to resource 5, which deals with the draft. The draft, especially the 1917 draft during World War I. It says that to this end, Congress has provided that the nation shall be organized for war selection, that each man shall be classified for service in the place to which it shall best serve the general nation. Okay. Many people felt in 1972 that the draft went against individual rights. Resource 6, the draft resistance for the Vietnam War. We have more people here who are resisting the draft during the Vietnam War through protesting and such things. Okay, guys, so there are a lot of great resources here to use. I'm not going to direct you to any particular one. You choose one. And if you go to your document set, not your document set, but your graphic organizer, go ahead and complete this. If you notice, there's one more less boxes for each of the principles. So you fill in information. So principle 1 would be a paragraph, which is checks and balances. Principle 2 would be a paragraph which would be individual rights. And then the last box, you have to compare and contrast. Okay, so compare both principles. Where do the powers overlap? What do they have in common? How are they different? So how is individual rights similar to individual checks and balances? But then how is checks and balances different from individual rights? All right, and let's look at the cog skill real quick for this comparing and contrasting, because this is something that's relatively new and you guys really haven't seen this before. So to score 3 for compare and contrasting, identify significant similarities and differences relevant to the topic. Okay, so a 4 is describe significant similarities, differences relevant to specific claim, main ideas, or a thesis. All right, that looks pretty much the same. Oh, yeah, never mind. You identify. Identify is just to say this is different from this. Describing means to go into detail, okay? To get a 5, that's a lot more. You describe significant similarities and differences. Describing means you explain in a detail, in a couple sentences at least. And then it goes on to say, explains in a limited way why the similarities and differences are meaningful within the frame reference. You know, in other words, you have to connect the two ideas and talk about why they're important in our lives today. So guys, this is last and final checkpoint for the project we're working on now. I think you're going to find this pretty easy because it was very similar to checkpoint 1, or it is similar. So with this said, I'm going to go to end this, and I feel that you guys are going to do just fine. Thank you very much.